After 2 decades of no playoff basketball and being widely considered one of the bottom feeders of the NBA, and to put it mildly, the Sacramento Kings finally returned to the playoffs 2 years ago, and it seemed like a nice step in the right direction for the organization. They had some players to build around, some young pieces. Keegan Murray was a nice rookie for them, and ended up having a really solid rookie year. Things were looking up for the Kings. Looked like they were ready to just be a playoff team for a number of years. It looked like maybe not a true contender in the grand scheme of things if you're comparing to other teams, but a playoff team and one that had players capable of getting hot. Maybe they could make some noise. A reason to be optimistic. Well, since then, we've had 2 play-in appearances and 0 playoff appearances, and a new GM, a new head coach, franchise point guard's gone. I don't want to use the term like same old Kings because I don't think that's necessarily the case, but it's back to the drawing board, back to just kind of that same reputation of what are they doing? Nobody knows what they're doing. They have enough talent to continue to be a competitive team. I think with the way the roster is constructed right now, that's a play-in team. But where's the direction? What are we doing here? Let's dive into that. We'll figure that out together. But before we do that, I wanted to remind you guys that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing. We've got the NBA and NHL playoffs going on. Let's see who we've got tonight going for the NBA playoffs because we are going to have game 3 of the Cavs Pacers series, as well as game 3 of the Thunder Nuggets series. Will the Cavs be able to, I guess, I don't even want to say retake home court advantage at this point, win a game? We'll see. Hopefully they're healthy enough to make this a little bit more competitive. I mean, excuse me, not more competitive because the first 2 games were very, very competitive, very fun games. But overall in the series, maybe steal some games in Indiana so we can get more games in this series. That's more what I'm hitting on, not that the games haven't been competitive because that's not true at all. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between these games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and a live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Sacramento Kings. So let's just talk about their season real quick. They went 40-42, 9 in the West, lost that play-in game to Dallas. As far as their draft picks, they owe a top 12 protected first to Atlanta. And right now that pick is projected to be 13. So let's see the percentage chance of that hopping up. It's like 4%, roughly 3.8% chance of that hopping up into the top 4 at all. About a 1% chance at each of the top 4 picks. So that adds up. Odds are low. So it looks like that pick is going to go to the Hawks. Obviously, there's still a chance that the Kings get it. And I think that could impact how this franchise operates. If it doesn't go to the Hawks this year and the Kings hop into a top 4 pick, then it becomes a top 10 protected first next year. And then after that, it would just become 2 seconds. So there's a 4% chance that it's hopping up. And I think in that case, you're like, okay, new page for the franchise, somebody to build around. Maybe we try rebuilding with a new GM coming in. Obviously, Doug Christie was the head coach down the stretch last year after they fired Mike Brown, but a new head coach, basically. So kind of a chance to establish their team, maybe. Don't think that that's a bad option for them. But that's a very small percentage chance of that happening. More than likely than not, they're only going to have pick 42 in this draft. They can add someone solid in the second round that can contribute immediately, potentially. But it's not necessarily going to be a difference maker. So the team that they have is probably what they're just going to have next year. They can make moves, but will they? So the main core guys are under contract for next season. The main starters: Zach LaVine, Sabonis, DeRozan, Malik Monk, Keegan Murray. Jonas Valanciunas is under contract. Evan Carter, who they just drafted in the first round last year. Trey Lyles is a free agent. Jake LaRavia is a free agent. LaRavia they acquired from Memphis at the deadline. I like him as like a younger piece. We'll see if they retain him or not, if he wants to stick around. I mean, after a couple of years kind of trying to figure things out in Memphis, never really able to get a spot in the rotation, gets traded to the Kings, still can't really figure something out. Like he's an important reserve. Maybe he goes somewhere where he can play more. I don't know. Keon Ellis is on a team option. I literally dare them to not pick that team option up. I mean, Keon Ellis at $2.3 million. He's significantly better than that. So I fully expect that to be picked up. If it hasn't already, I don't think it has, but. And then this is one of those teams where there's not a ton of depth. That was one of their issues, in my opinion. So they had more depth after the deadline, but still not a ton. And the guys they had, they couldn't really rely on, or they didn't really rely on. I mean, Doug McDermott's going to be a free agent. Jay Crowder's going to be a free agent, but in like 2025, you're hoping to not have to rely on Doug McDermott, Jay Crowder, and Markelle Fultz to significantly impact the game. All solid veterans, but you'd like, I guess, more depth that isn't just like locker room guys or guys you probably don't want playing 20 minutes a game. And then a couple of the other young pieces they have, Isaac Jones, Isaiah Crawford, Mason Jones. Isaiah Crawford's probably the most interesting of those guys. I think he went undrafted last year and just immediately picked up with the Kings. But it was like more one of those situations where I guess you could compare it to more like Austin Reeves, where it was like he was probably going to be a second round pick, but kind of pushed to not be, if I'm remembering that correctly. Regardless, a guy that probably should have been drafted that wasn't and ended up picking up with the Kings. Didn't really see the floor much, but there isn't a ton of young upside potential guys here. This is a team built to win now, but probably not good enough to win a championship. So they're just going to be stuck in the middle of the pack until they make a change. What is that change? I don't know. I don't necessarily think they have the assets to bring in a star, but depends on how much they want to sacrifice. So we talked about maybe after the draft lottery having a better indication of where their first is going to be, or if they have a first, in all likelihood they won't. But if they don't have it this year, that means they will have their first next year, and they have all their future firsts, and they also have unprotected firsts from the Spurs in 2027, just assuming that that's not going to be an early first, and the Timberwolves in 2031. Who knows what that's going to look like because it's so far away. And then they also, the Spurs can swap firsts with the Kings in 2031, same year. So long way away. They have picks that they can move. So is there some sort of trade for a star where you're moving? Like, I don't know if they trade for Zach LaVine and then immediately trade Zach LaVine, or if there would be something in there that would prevent them from moving him immediately. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but they do have enough picks to probably entice a team that would have a star available. And maybe that's a pathway if they want to win now. I think the easier option is, or the option, maybe not easier, but the one that probably would be easier to pull off is moving the stars for picks and hitting the reset button. How do you sell a fan base that just suffered through a 20-year playoff drought, finally got back to the playoffs, and then still playing competitive basketball? How do you sell that fan base on another rebuild? Why would they have confidence that this like new GM, new head coach, but like this ownership of this team can successfully lead them through another rebuild? They traded away the one guy that was technically part of that rebuild, that they actually was a homegrown talent in De'Aaron Fox. Nobody else on the, I mean, Keegan Murray was, but everybody else was either free agency or trade, and they still couldn't really make things happen. So it's interesting. Um, we'll see. They signed or hired GM Scott Perry, who I think most recently was with the Knicks in 2023. Previously had some comments on Zach LaVine, but I think when he was hired, he was asked about that. He kind of said like that he talked to Zach LaVine about it. Um, don't think that a trade for Zach LaVine would be imminent just because Scott Perry is coming in, but it's not off the table. I don't think anybody on this team would be off the table for a trade, especially if the veterans here want to compete for a championship, like LaVine, Sabonis, DeRozan. If they want to compete for a championship, they don't feel like this team is built for that. They could ask out, definitely. It's not a crazy theory for them to ask out, but so we've talked about their picks, we've talked about their future picks, we've talked about their who's going to be on the roster next year. So let's talk about how to value some of these guys in Dynasty, which is there isn't a ton to be super excited about. But we'll start going down the list here. We'll start with Zach LaVine, who they acquired at the trade deadline. And we just talked about Chicago. And that was the trade there to send Zach LaVine to Sacramento. It was part of the De'Aaron Fox deal. So I guess it was almost like, hey, I know we traded away our franchise point guard, but we got back this other guy who's really good and can help us win now. And okay, I don't hate the idea of it, but I don't necessarily, I don't want to just keep repeating this, but I don't think that this core is enough to win a championship. And how do you, I guess, feel super confident in Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis as a core to win a championship when we just saw in the East in an easier conference things not work out for the Bulls with Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Vucevic, which Sabonis I would say is better than Vooch, but is he that much better that it's a championship team? I don't know. So Zach LaVine is 30 now, turned 30 this year. He's a excellent scorer, but a lot of his game, especially earlier on in his career, is built on athleticism. He's gotten better. He's a craftier scorer. And I don't see a reason why he can't continue to be a really high-level scorer for a couple more years. And he's coming off one of the most efficient seasons of his career. Shot 51% from the floor. Like, that's very intriguing, very, I guess, encouraging is probably a better word. And I think he can continue to do that for a few more years. He's had some injury issues in the past. I think playing 75 games this year was, again, encouraging. I think he's a good win now player in dynasty leagues. I'm not confident that his game is going to age very well to the point where he's still contributing at a high level in 5 years. Because I think a lot of it is built on him being a freak athlete. And I don't know how well that's going to translate when he's 35, especially with the injuries that he's had. Hopefully he can stay on the floor the way he has 3 of the last 4 years. Not this past season, but the season before, only playing 25 games. That was just a really weird season. But yeah, I don't think that too much is going to change from him. I think the situation is kind of interesting. Things didn't go as well in Sacramento, but I think part of that was trying to figure things out with a new team and no true point guard. Malik Monk, I thought, had someone, we'll talk about him in a minute because I think he's one of the more interesting pieces on this team. Had some really good stretches as a point guard or as a playmaker. But I mean, Devin Carter is the guy you just drafted, but between Devin Carter, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, like nobody's a true point guard, but they all are ball handlers. And then Sabonis is probably the best playmaker on the team, but trying to figure things out, not step on toes. So I don't know. Pretty interesting. I think Zach LaVine will be fine, but I'm not expecting things to improve drastically after a full offseason with the Kings, like heading into this first full season with them. I think he'll just continue to be Zach LaVine. I think It's probably what I'm going to end up saying for a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about. Next up, we'll see who's next on the scoring list for this team. It's DeMar DeRozan. He'll be 36 at the start of next season. We know he's incredibly crafty as a mid-range scorer, and he improved and just generally just shot more threes this year. Ended up hitting 1.1 per game, so didn't end up making a ton more, but it felt like he was just shooting more of them. Which, I mean, it's partially him adapting to the modern NBA and also probably just getting a little older and shooting catch and shoot threes is a little bit easier than creating all these mid-range shots that he's known for. Still incredibly athletic, but again, you have to question like how much longer is he going to be able to keep this up? I mean, we've seen the points drop each of the last few seasons. A couple of years ago with Chicago, he was averaging almost 28 per game, went down to 24, 20, or 24 and a half, 24, and this past year, 22.3. That's what happens when players get older. It's nothing surprising. I think DeMar can still hold value for a couple more years in redraft leagues or in dynasty leagues for a win now team. You can probably get him for very cheap just because there is going to be a bit of a cap on how long this is going to continue. And I guess not everybody wants to have this older player that could just randomly, just not randomly, but drop off quicker than we realize. It could be he just stops playing as well just because he's getting older, or it could be he's getting older, so he's more susceptible to injuries, and there could be something that happens there. It's just hard to predict. So you could probably get him for pretty cheap. And the good news is, even at his age, he's been very, very available. Played 78 games this past year, 79 before that, 74 before that, 76 before that. He's just been very durable throughout his career. Let's see, his career low for games played was 60 during the 2014-2015 season. I don't think that was a lockout year. So, I mean, he played 61 once with San Antonio and 68 once with San Antonio, 63 another year with Toronto, but basically has played at least 70 games almost every season of his career, which is very encouraging. Nobody can predict injuries. Anything can happen, but he's been durable. He's been productive. I don't expect him to continue to be elite the way he was a couple of years ago, but he can be very, very good, and you can get him for a discounted price because of his age. So if you're looking to win now in your dynasty league, I think DeMar DeRozan's a great target. And I mean, he's on a friendlier contract. I believe $24 million per year is what he's going to make. A little under 25 million this upcoming season. It's not like a contract that the Kings are going to have to trade. Like LaVine and Sabonis are both making north of $40 million a year. DeMar DeRozan, that's a little bit more of a team-friendly contract for what he's giving them. I think he's a solid piece, especially if they're going to continue to try to compete, which again, with the whole rebuilding thing, I don't foresee them doing that. That would be more of my take on it, what I would do if I were them. But that's probably going to be what I'm going to say for a lot of teams. I like to rebuild. But if we're going to try and win now, you do that with DeMar on a team-friendly contract. Makes sense. Domantas Sabonis. There are a few, but not too many players that can contribute the numbers that he can. This past season averaged 19.1 points, 13.9 rebounds, 6 assists. Elite field goal percentage, of course. Improved the free throws a little bit. I think it was better early on and then had some like rougher stretches, but it seemed like I think him and Aaron Fox were both started off the season shooting really well from the free throw line, like which was kind of surprising. Sabonis is just going to keep being Sabonis. I hate to keep repeating that point, but he's going to be the offensive hub for this Kings team, which I think maybe you could be encouraged by that but he didn't. He actually saw his assists go down kind of towards the end of the season. We'll see if maybe if Doug Christie is more intentional about saying let's run the offense through Sabonis, or if it's a factor of not having a true point guard anymore and having DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, both guys who want the ball in their hands. Maybe that hurts Sabonis a little bit. I think that it makes sense to run the offense through Sabonis and let him play make for at least 2 elite scoring guards, and then also Malik Monk, who's a very, very good scoring guard. But we'll see if that's what they end up doing or not. I guess you could be slightly discouraged by this past season. I mean, his points and rebounds stayed about the same. Free throw percentage slightly improved, but the assist dropped from 8.2 the year before to 6 this past season. It's a little, I mean, his first season in Sacramento was 5.2, and then it was 7.3, 8.2, and then 6.0. I would hope that he could get that back up, but I think that could just partially be a product of now he doesn't have De'Aaron Fox to kind of run the 2-man game with. Could be that he was still trying to figure out how to run that with Zach LaVine, and maybe a full off season will help. I don't think he's a guy that, I mean, you can be slightly concerned just based on the way that things ended, but I think he's good enough that I'm not going to just hold it against him. Just turned 29 years old, so, and his game is not built on athleticism. He's also been very durable throughout his career. I think his game's going to age just fine, and he'll be very, very productive for a while. So even if, things don't continue to work out in Sacramento, and maybe he does want to move and be traded to a different team, just kind of start fresh, nobody's going to acquire Domantas Sabonis with the intention of him not being a big part of the offense. He's too good for that. So not too concerned about him regardless of situation. He's going to continue to be a fantasy stud. All right. Next up, let's talk about Malik Monk. This was a pretty interesting case here because he started off as the 6th man and started to have some really good games. Moved into the starting lineup, which, I mean, he was a reserve for the entire past season, basically. And then moved into the starting lineup in December. Right before that, he had some 20 plus, I guess 25.9 assist games, 25.9 assist games, couple of them back to back, and then kind of maintained that production. It was inconsistent, but was a surprisingly strong source of assists despite playing with De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis in the lineup. Pretty interesting. And he was able to maintain it fairly inconsistently, but for a good while there. Returned to a reserve role at the end of the season, but it was also kind of weird because he had this basically breakout season, especially as a playmaker. And then when they traded De'Aaron Fox, it was oh, okay, Malik Monk has been doing this. I think maybe he'll be able to keep doing it or be even better now that he doesn't have to share the ball with De'Aaron Fox, but it actually didn't work out that way. He still had some decent games, but overall, his play really dropped after that. And then the left calf strain ended his season just a little bit early. It was just interesting because we saw him do it, and then he had more of an opportunity, and then he wasn't able to continue to do it. And granted, you're taking away a major part of the offense and trying to replace with a different major piece of the offense in Zach LaVine. And then Malik Monk moved back to a bench role. So what does this starting lineup look like next year? I think it depends on who they add in free agency. Could it be Zach LaVine, Keon Ellis, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis again? I think that makes sense to have Keon Ellis in there as a really good defender, considering, Zach LaVine is an offensive player. DeMar DeRozan's an offensive player. Not saying that they're just traffic cones, but they're there for offense. Malik Monk would be there for offense. can also be there for defense, and he doesn't need the ball in his hands a lot. And having Malik Monk run the second unit, like all that makes sense. But as a sixth man, Malik Monk was solid, but he wasn't producing like he did this past season. And 17.2 points, 3.8 rebounds, 5.6 assists, a lot of career highs there. So were the minutes, 31.6 career high. But I don't know if he's going to continue to get that opportunity. So it makes him a difficult player to, I guess, predict or to value. Only 27 years old, so right kind of entering the prime of his career. But I think it really just depends. If he's a sixth man, he's a solid upside piece that's probably going to produce fairly inconsistently. But if he's starting, then we've seen what he can do. But then also we've seen what him as a starter with Zach LaVine looks like versus him as a starter with De'Aaron Fox looks like, and it's not as good. I think having an off season again, just like building chemistry with this team, I think it kind of helps everyone. Will improve. Things will look a little bit better next year for everyone individually. But it was a pretty interesting case this past season because when he first started playing really well, moved into the starting lineup, I was of the camp that believed that he would be able to sustain it because he had, some 9 assists, 6 assists, 12 assists, like a bunch of games with insane assist numbers. I was like, yeah, the value looks great right now, but do we really think that Malik Monk is going to continue to get this many assists and also this many shots with De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis in the starting lineup as well, and then also Keegan Murray needing his shots? The result was Malik Monk just kept getting the looks, which was good. So I was wrong on that. But I don't think that, I'm not trying to just keep coming from like a negative point of view, but I don't really see that happening again next season. And Keegan Murray ended up just getting kind of left on the back burner. That was the result of that, which we'll talk about Keegan Murray. And I think my stance on Keegan Murray hasn't really changed. I think he is a solid player, but I think him going number 4 overall made sense to the Kings at the time because when they were picking at 4 and it was him and Jaden Ivey, it was, do you want the older rookie that's going to be ready to contribute now, fill out the starting lineup, or do you want to draft the younger player with more upside? And they went with Keegan Murray. And maybe I'm not saying, maybe not older. I feel like older is probably the wrong word because I feel like they're actually the same age, if I'm not mistaken. So let me just double check this. Okay, roughly the same age. Keegan Murray is a tad older, not that much older. But the more the NBA ready prospect is probably the better way to put that. And that's what they opted for, but it made sense at the time because they had a team that was ready to compete for the postseason. And it helped them end their playoff drought. But Keegan Murray, when he was drafted, was never a top 5 pick with the upside to be an all-star, in my opinion. He was drafted because he was a very solid starter. And I think he can be a long-term starter and worth the number 4 overall pick. And that's totally fine. But acknowledging that he may not be an all-star and he went top 5, and that's okay. But I think if we just need to be semi-realistic, I think he was very good as a rookie. This past season, 12.4 points, 6.7 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 2 threes. As a rookie, averaged 12.2 points, 2.6 threes. Year 2, 15.2 points, 2.4 threes. The rebounds improved again this past year, so that's good. That helps him in fantasy. But less shot attempts, less makes, less points. And he's a decent producer of defensive stats, but he's not an assist guy. So if he can get to a steal and a block, like that's good. He didn't shoot a high percentage. And maybe that was all just factored together of him seeing less shots, struggling to get in rhythm, getting less shots because he wasn't making shots, and just kind of compounded on each other. Then you take away De'Aaron Fox from the equation. Is Zach LaVine or Malik Monk intentionally looking to get Keegan Murray going? Like, just didn't work out well. I think Keegan Murray can continue to be a very solid player, a player worth drafting in a redraft league that holds value in a dynasty league, while also acknowledging that he doesn't have the upside to become an all-star. Sure, he's 24, he still has time. Maybe he just makes a drastic leap that I'm not expecting. But I think if he just keeps improving in the margins and just being like slightly better than he was the year before, he's going to have a very, very long NBA career, very successful NBA career, make a lot of money because he's an important piece, but not seeing a tremendous amount of upside here. But that's okay. He'll be solid. That's basically what it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you're a Kings fan and you're looking for him to kind of be almost like a player to build around, not really seeing that. I think he holds more value, even though he's young, on a team that's ready to win now than on a rebuilding team. So if they choose to go for it and just keep trying to win with this team, I think he's a great player to keep around. So hopefully, I think best case scenario, we saw what he did last, like not this past season, the year before, 15 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2.5 threes, steal, almost a block. If he can continue to average like 15 points, he got up to almost 7 rebounds this past year, 2.5 threes, and then a steal and a block, like that's very valuable in a 9-cat league without being this superstar. But also, we need to acknowledge that if we're looking at his 9-cat ranking, it was 87th on Basketball Monsters past season and 59th the year before. He doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't get assists, but he doesn't turn the ball over because he's not really playing with the ball in his hands. So that inflates his 9-cat value. Because nothing else truly like stands out. It's almost going to be like that. Oh, what's a good example? I think Tobias Harris level of production, where it's like he's not great at anything for a 9-cat league, but he's not bad at anything or not terrible at anything. I think if you're looking at it, like his assists 1.4 per game this year, like that's not good. It doesn't really hurt you anywhere, pretty everywhere. So yeah, I think that's just kind of what he is. All right. Who else do we have? I know we have, excuse me, my king Keon Ellis. I guess it also makes sense that he plays for the Kings, who has the makings. He just needs the minutes, but he has the makings of a fantasy stud. This past season, 24.3 minutes per game, 8.3 points, 2.7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, blah, blah, blah. 1.5 steals, almost a block, 1.7 threes, solid shooting splits. When he plays a lot and starts, it's inconsistent, but he can have some big scoring / shooting nights. But when he plays a lot, he also gets a bunch of steals. And he gets blocks. Like he's an elite defender. It's very strange that the Kings don't play him more. Especially like I said at the beginning. They pick up his team option. My goodness, I dare them to not. A little over $2 million this year. The production that he will provide is going to far outweigh what they're going to pay him. He'll earn a really, really nice contract from them if he just continues to do what he has been doing. It's been inconsistent, but I think steals are a volatile stat. So he can make a defensive impact without necessarily getting the steals. And then the offense, it's just going to come and go. Just being on this team with all the guys we've mentioned, Keon Ellis is not a priority on offense. He can hit threes, but if he's not getting looks because the other guys are getting looks, like that's just the way it is. But he can make his mark on defense consistently. It's going to look great in the category league. And yeah, the Kings just need to give him minutes. Just start him. Just makes sense. We saw what Dyson Daniels could do, and I'm not expecting a Dyson Daniels breakout. This is not the next Dyson Daniels, but we saw what Dyson Daniels did just from seeing his minutes increase from getting traded from New Orleans to Atlanta. I think that just seeing Keon Ellis in a starting role consistently, we'll see a good job. I mean, he was top 109 cat leagues this year because he averaged a steal and a half and turned it over less than once a game and had solid shooting splits. But if he's playing 30 minutes per game, he could be among the league leaders in steals and average over a block from the guard spot. That's pretty valuable. He had almost 2 threes per game this year as well. Could he get over that? His game translates very well to 9 category leagues. Would love to see him playing a larger role. I think he's the type of player that any team would want. Just looking at this, I believe he'll be an unrestricted free agent if they pick up his. I mean, whether or not they pick up his team option, he'll end up being an unrestricted free agent the next year. So if Sacramento doesn't want to pay him a really, really big contract, somebody will. Somebody will for sure. Devin Carter was a rookie this year. Didn't really get an extensive look at him because of the offseason shoulder surgery. And then just didn't play a large role after he was finally healthy enough to make his debut. So not too many conclusions to draw from that. He didn't start playing until January, had a couple of solid scoring nights, but I don't know, he was drafted to be a win now piece, and then he just wasn't able to find a rhythm or contribute much because of the shoulder injury. I'm hoping that a full offseason will help him and that he'll be ready to go to start next season. And then we can probably get a better look at him. And I think also we'll see him in Summer League, so that'll be good as well. But, I mean, there's not much to take away from Jonas Valanciunas, Trey Lyles, a lot of these guys that we kind of know where they are at this point in their career. I think the one other guy, which I mentioned earlier, is Jake LaRavia, who will be an unrestricted free agent. So he may not even be back in Sacramento. We'll see. Had some flashes with Memphis last year, averaged 10.8 points per game, an inefficient 10.8 points per game, but saw an increased role with Memphis playing without most of their starters for most of the year because of all the injuries. Hasn't really been able to figure things out consistently. Also was out for the last couple weeks of the year. I think he has enough upside here. I think he's one of the few upside pieces that was on this team last year that just like kind of riding the bench, but has upside. Showed some flashes at times. I think his situation next year is just going to tell a lot. Like if he's back with Sacramento because they really want him back, he'll be in a reserve role and he may not be able to kind of build on the upside that he has. Maybe he signs elsewhere and sees a larger role. I think that'd be really encouraging for him. I think he's worth stashing. He's one of the few players that hasn't really played much on this team that's worth stashing. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at NoahRubin22. You can like, subscribe, comment, air out your frustrations with anything I said. That's totally fine. And we will be back next week with more episodes and early on breaking down the draft lottery, because that'll be next week. And we'll have some exciting news, exciting update early next week. I'm very excited to share that. But that's going to do it for this episode, and I will see you guys next time.